This is a download from the BBC of the World Football Phone-In, which is broadcast as part of the Up All Night programme on 5 Live from 2:30am to 4am on Saturday mornings. Here's the latest edition.
It's Europe and South America this morning. Tim Vickery is in Rio to take care of any of your questions and comments on football from South America and indeed on players from over there playing in our leagues too. Tim, good morning.
Very good morning to you, Dotton. Do you know, it's exactly 10 years since this little slot started. I just had a look, checked my records. 8th of December 1997, we did this the first time. It was just a kind of 5 or 10 minute chat, and it's grown and grown with the help of many, many people. So I'm kind of expecting a watch to be in the post from the BBC.
Hey, not just a watch, a gold one at that. But hang on, where's the fanfare? Did we not hear what Tim just said? Congratulations, you've kept it going for 10 years. You deserve not just a watch, you deserve all our accolades, and we're very grateful to you for keeping it alive all this time. Well done, mate.
A lot of help from some terrific people, Sean the Big Wheel and Andy Brass, who does a terrific job, and I'm very happy to welcome him along tonight. Hello, Andy.
Hello, Tim. Thank you for welcoming me.
And Andy, you're back in that loo of yours in Lyon, but good to have you either way. We're talking European football tonight as well, and I know you don't want to talk about this, but it's the first one I'm going to throw at you. Mourinho for England.
I didn't say I didn't want to talk about it. I said I didn't want to talk about it for an hour and a half. Although we'll see how it goes. I personally think it would be a great appointment, not just for what he would do to the team, but what he would do to the structure of the whole English football. If he could do to the structure of English football what he did to the structure of Chelsea as a club, then we'd be on the right track. I think he's outstanding, not just for his achievements, but all the myriad ways in which he's so suitable for the job, not just in that way that he'd look at the wider picture, but he just gets ahead of Capello for me, because he can actually speak English, which I think has got to be a start. Media savvy is very, very important, and the fact that he's proven himself so tigerish at dealing with the pressure, I'm not sure there are many who could stand up to it as well as he could.
So we're not going to talk about Mourinho for the entire 90 minutes of this anniversary edition of the World Football. Sorry?
Maybe 89.
89 minutes. Don't tempt us. First of all, from GG in Middlesbrough, what is Juninho doing now, and is he still as good as he was at Middlesbrough? He's
in Australia with Sydney FC, I think they're called. He's had some injury problems, I believe, over there. But he's a very determined little customer. He's, now 34, coming up 35. But he's never, ever going to go anywhere just for the money. There have been moves that haven't worked out for him, and Celtic didn't really work out for him. But he hasn't gone to Australia for the money. And when he's been fit, I think he's shown impressive flashes of form. Obviously now that he's into his mid-30s, he's not the player that he was, because he's a little guy who was really dependent on that acceleration just to kick away from the guy coming in to make the tackle. So he's obviously lost some of that. So he's not half the player I think that he was in his pomp, but he's still got a lot of experience and a lot of skill on the ball and a lot of desire to add to Australian football. So I think it's Australian football's privilege to have someone like that there, because I'm sure he's someone who, if Australian football plays its cards right, he's someone who they could take on in a kind of consultant's capacity when his playing days are finished. I'm sure he could make a real input to the growth of football in Australia.
Just a quick text for you, Tim. This is from a long-term listener, Steve in Pompey, who says, congratulations on the 10 years. Why did you start this World Football Phone-In?
Well, Radio 5 offered me. I'd got into the BBC in 97 was my wonderful year, because at the end of 96 I was honestly really going hungry. It was terrific for my calorie-controlled diet, but not good for either the bank balance or the soul. And then suddenly 97, the build-up, especially to the 98 World Cup, the doors started to open. You have to remember that I just caught that time when football was globalising. A kind of Romario instinct of being in the right place at the right time, maybe. A 94 World Cup, and going into that competition, the average English supporter, he didn't know any of the Brazil team until before the tournament. By 98, that had all changed because the Nike money had gone in, football was globalising and so on. So 97, suddenly the doors started to open up for me. I got into World Soccer magazine. I did a TV program for the BBC called Gary Lineker's Golden Goals. That got me into the BBC World Service, and then someone there at Radio 5 heard me and thought, well, let's try a South American football slot, and it started like that. And we went on, and it seemed to work, and the time got expanded. And then they came to me with the idea for a phone-in, and I thought, well, is it really going to work? I wasn't too sure. And then they said they went ahead anyway, and we've gone on from strength to strength because we're including the rest of the world. There's terrific debates, and it's not about me at all. It's about everyone who contributes to make this slot the success, which I hope it is.
Of course it is, and there are Facebook sites dedicated to this slot. Now, there are listeners from all over the world listening to the World Football Phone-In as we speak now. Very quickly for you, Andy, from Tom, he says, how are Marseille looking ahead of the game against the mighty Reds? It's Tuesday, isn't it?
Better, improved. They've done a bit better over the last. I think they've 4 league games unbeaten, and the last time I caught them live, they won at Lyon, which was a real shock result. Maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Eric Gerrits has taken a while to change things around. He's tried to make them a bit more hard to break down. He's introduced a 5-man midfield with the Senegalese striker Mamadou Niang, who's been playing very, very well up front on his own, which is bad news for Djibril Cissé because he's been pretty much kicking his heels on the bench during that time. But they are looking good, and it's always difficult to go to Marseille. Their home form's been very patchy this season, but them in the Champions League has been a different kettle of fish, and whatever happens, it's going to be a great match, and it's going to be a great occasion for all the Liverpool fans who are going to go out there.
Thanks, Dave in Liverpool. 10 years of the World Football Phone-In, Dave. Would you not say that deserves a standing ovation?
I was just about to say I'd like to commend it. I've only been aware of it over the last 5-6 years, something like, and it's great entertainment, and I didn't know it went on for 10 years. So, well done to Radio 5 Live and all the other people that participate in it.
Absolutely. But you got a question for Tim?
Yeah, all it is, Tim, is that I'm a vehement supporter of women's football, and I noticed that Brazil got to the Women's World Cup final in it was September. Yeah. And the Brazil Football Association said they'd set up a women's league. That isn't there. There was a regional leagues, but they said they'd set up a national league in Brazil. And I just want to know if you know anything what's going on in that situation.
Yeah, I remember your calls over the years, Dave, and you've showed terrific commitment to this particular subject. It's a national cup competition that they've set up, and it is actually gone ahead. It's getting towards the closing stages now. It's a cup competition which they hope in the future will become a national league competition. The Brazilian FA, they really found that their hand was forced by the performances of the Brazil team in that World Cup in China, and it was very funny because the day they beat the United States in the semi-final, absolutely thrashed the United States, that night suddenly. And suddenly everyone was talking about it here. Everyone was talking about women's football and what a great player Marta is and so on. And it was that night on the website of the Brazilian FA that they announced this competition, and they said that the president of the Brazilian FA, Ricardo Teixeira, has been working in silence on this project for some time, and he's now pleased to be able to announce. But it struck me very much as a rush job, under pressure.
Absolutely.
And that's been the case of the women's footballers in Brazil. And just to give you an example of the kind of... my own girlfriend used to play years ago when she was a kid. If her dad found her playing football, he'd thrash her, and he did thrash her for it. Marta, the great Marta, the world's best player in women's football, had similar experiences with her own brother. And every step that they've made has had to be forced. They've forced the agenda every step of the way, and they're going to have to keep on forcing it because this national cup competition, it's very quick, it's been very hurried, it's there, but it's all quite precarious. There's a long way still to go, and unfortunately so much of this is results dependent. The Brazilian women's team, they need to keep winning in style, and keep the pressure on in order for this sport to grow.
I'd really appreciate the information you've given me there, and I can only equate and support exactly what you've said about the way women are portrayed in football and in society in Brazil. And it's really sad because, They played absolutely brilliant football, and what it came down to in the World Cup final, the bottle went. That's all it was. If they would have kept their bottle, they would have beaten the Germans, because in the first half,
goalkeeper, the German goalkeeper didn't concede a goal in the entire tournament and looked a class act. Because one of the things I think you can see generally in women's football, I'm not an expert at it, but I watch it when I can, and one of the things I think you can see in it is that the standard of goalkeeping is very, very poor. So if you've got a really terrific goalkeeper like the Germans had, I think that does give you an advantage.
But the point being, and I'm glad you said that about women's goalkeeping, if the males in any country want to help support the women's game, well, therefore, the women goalkeepers are going to be better because they're going to get the appropriate coaching. But if men don't support women's football, well, it's always going to be the same, isn't it?
Sure. I agree with you 100%. I think that the potential for it is huge. Brazil's quite contradictory in a way because in the case of, let's take match day officials, you find Brazilian women being referees and referees' assistants or linesmen, whatever, at senior level. You find them doing that. They get opportunities, but then so often they're judged by the media and so on, more on their looks than they are on their ability. So it's quite a complex and contradictory situation in Brazil, but good performances, whether it's as footballers or as referees or so on, good performances push the agenda and open the door for those coming behind. And it's exactly as was the case for black footballers, has been the case for black footballers in so many cases. The agenda is forced so much from below. It's those good performances that open the door for those who are coming behind, and also force those in authority to make changes.
Yeah, Dave, thanks a lot for the call. Imran in Leeds, good morning.
Good morning, Don. Morning, Tim.
Morning.
Don, congratulations on your 10 years. I think it's fantastic for football fans all around the world.
Congratulate the legend Dino, because I haven't been here for 10 years.
yeah, exactly, Don. And I think that's what football is about, Don. When you see all the problems in the world, I think it's great that people can find someone that they're passionate about, and I think that's what it's about.
Absolutely.
You know, Don, I've got a couple of points, Don, yeah?
Yeah, go ahead.
One is about AC Milan. I think whenever I've watched them over the years, they always peak at the right time. I think I was listening to the commentary on 5 Live when they played Celtic, and some people were being a bit critical of them, but I think their mentality is to go out there and win the big trophy. And I don't think that's a fluke, Don. I think the big clubs like Milan, Real Madrid, even Liverpool, Bayern Munich, I think there's something in their mindset that makes them go out there and deliver on the big occasion. And
I do think that Milan have definitely got a winning mentality, and certainly they're absolute past masters in the Champions League. And if you look at their record over the last 5 years, there's nothing to match them. Where they are running into problems is in the league, and I think this is where their lack of investment in players, as I've spoken about before, is maybe showing up. Against Celtic in the week, as you say, I think it was all about experience. They just really knew what they were doing. Players like Seedorf, Gattuso, they've all been there before, and they've all done it before. But as I say, I think this is sort of unsustainable. There are so many sort of well into their 30s now. Maldini's 39; he's coming to the end, and I almost saw a sort of changing of the European baton the other week when I saw their game in Benfica, and they got the draw, which in the end, coupled with Celtic winning against Shakhtar Donetsk, meant they did qualify for the next round automatically. But I think the way they played that night, and the way Benfica played that night, Benfica have got a really young, hungry squad, and players like Gattuso and Seedorf and Ambrosini were really getting the runaround. So I think that was something that showed that maybe their legs are catching up on them, and definitely some investment's going to have to be made there, but you can't argue with what they've done in the Champions League over the last 5 years, and you wouldn't bet against them going pretty close again this year.
What about the World Club Cup? Just stay with us, Imran, because I want to bring Raymond in Manchester in on this. So you wanted to talk about AC Milan with regards to the World Club Cup as well?
Well, good evening to you, Dalton.
Good evening.
The thing is, I want to know who's representing South America.
Boca Juniors of Argentina.
Oh, Well, that's something I've learnt. And I remember getting the programme, a match day programme, through some dealers when Manchester United played Palmeiras in the 1999 Intercontinental Cup, they called it then. I got the programme for 35 quid, you know.
My God.
Yeah, but so that's. Could you tell me when the actual competition takes place and where?
Well, it's already started. We had the first game earlier this morning. Sepahan of Iran beat Waitakere United. Apologies if I've pronounced that wrong. 3-1. So that gets them the right to play Urawa Red Diamonds of Japan on Monday morning, early time. The winners of that one will play Milan on Thursday morning. On Sunday morning, very early your time, something like 5:45 your time, there's Etoile of Tunisia, I believe, against Pachuca of Mexico, who are an attractive side. And the winners of that will play Boca Juniors Wednesday morning your time. And then Sunday is the final. That'll be Sunday morning your time. Sunday we'll have the third place off, followed by the final.
And Imran, just very quickly, what was the second point you wanted to make? Was it about Jose Mourinho?
And I think that, watching him since he's come here, Don, and the pressure's been at Chelsea, and Chelsea not at Milan or Liverpool, but he was outfoxed on 3 occasions. On one occasion he put Robert Hoof up front, and in the last season, he went and parked the bus in his own famous words at Anfield. And I think that, unless you're a Hiddink and Arsene Wenger, somebody who can actually, from top to bottom, completely transform it. And I know it will never happen, but I would give Arsene Wenger the job on a part-time basis and say, just do as you want, because, that is what his philosophy is.
But you reckon that Mourinho's not up to the England job?
I don't think so, because if you look at the pressure, Don, winning the league, I don't think it's that difficult. If you look at Grant, he's come in and he was an unknown, but I think he settled in well. I don't think this guy, when the pressure's on him, Don, I don't think he can deliver. He's not a Benitez, who's tactically astute. So I think if they give him the job, it'll be interesting, but I don't think he'll be able to cut his cloth at England, Don.
Okay, Andy?
I have to respectfully disagree with that, because I think one of my favourite features of Mourinho actually is the fact is he's made it okay not to make substitutions before the 70-minute mark. He's not afraid to see a problem and call it. Of course he's made mistakes. I mean, I think it's a rare manager that hasn't. But regarding his tactical ability, I think Imran makes an interesting point, because what I think, obviously I've come out and say I would love to see him be the coach of England, but what would be more interesting, I think, is to see him. We've talked about all the other jobs that he's been linked with on the European scene. I think Barcelona's the interesting one. I mean, obviously with the ties between Chelsea and Barcelona in the Champions League, people thought he'd rather burn his bridges in that direction, but I'm sure that would blow over if he went there and did an okay job. It looks like Rijkaard may be coming to the end of his tenure. Now, I think what would be the challenge for Mourinho there is to actually take over a side who are expected to produce attractive football. I mean, I'm assuming with him, if he was taking over England, I'm sure he'd be effective, but Mourinho's sides aren't really known for their expressive, free-flowing game. Like at Porto, he got the best out of what were regarded at the time as a limited set of players, and he got the very best out of them. But at a team that's known for entertaining, to get a team to be successful and attractive, I think would be a new challenge for him, and it'd be really interesting to see how he stepped up to that.
Sean in York says, happy 10th birthday, Tim. Watch out, you'll be getting zits and your voice will be dropping soon. Dropping or drooping? Perhaps it's dropping. Tim, how has the game globally changed in the past 10 years? And what's the best moment in that time that you remember?
The best moment, I think, was the Cambiasso goal for Argentina against Serbia in the World Cup. It was just an absolute moment of magic, which holds out everything that I believe about the beautiful game was expressed in that move from Argentina. I absolutely loved watching that and seeing that side come together and knowing that they were capable of that kind of goal. That was a high point. How's the game changed? Well, it's globalised so much. And if you go back to, say, 96, 97, how many foreigners were there in the Premiership? A fraction compared to the amount that there are today. And perhaps money has taken over too much. I remember seeing Arrigo Sacchi, the illustrious Italian coach, saying that money is now too dominant, and perhaps people in football should be paid less in order to play less, because money is dominating everything. So there are lots and lots of challenges for the game to look at, many of which are the consequence of the game's own success. And success can create problems. So lots and lots of problems as a result, perhaps, of the success of the game. But the big thing, I think, in the last 10 years for me has been the globalization of the game, perhaps also strictly on the field, the growing physicality of the game. And the physical preparation specialists will tell you that in the mid-70s, players were running 5,000 metres per game. By the mid-90s, that was 10,000 metres per game. Now, you're getting people running 14,000 metres, 13,000 metres. So the game is getting quicker, more frenetic, more athletic, which is why that Cambiasso goal, the result of a wonderful collective, quick, slow change of rhythm passing movement. It's why I love that so much, because it shows that even in today's frenetic football, the old philosophy of passing the ball still works. You know, if you in a zone of elaboration, if you forget about the goal and look for a teammate and keep passing the ball, then sooner or later the goal will appear. So that's why I treasure that particular goal so much.
Ed from Luton says, congratulations, I was never a footy fan until I started listening to your show, and now I never miss an episode. If only it could be extended. Well done. Happy 10th birthday, says Rich in Brum, to the best football show on the radio. Please pass on my thanks to your experts. I look forward to the next 10 years. And of course, this wouldn't be a 10th anniversary of the World Football Phone-In if we didn't introduce one of our regulars who we haven't heard from for quite some time. Hiral in Uxbridge.
Hello, everybody. Unavoidable circumstances, sadly, but I'm back, and I guess in good time as well, because 10 years it's a long time.
Do you know, I was surprised that you missed the classic African and Australian football phone-in when we had African and Australia all night long. You missed it.
It's just
Africa, Asia, everywhere, all night long. You missed it.
I think you've had like two in the last, let's say, 6 months, and I missed them both.
You can always listen again, of course, on podcasts and all that.
Yeah. I got to stop complaining then, because I was just going to say, where's Jurasimi?
I'm sure with the African Nations Cup coming up next year, I'm sure he'll be in situ, as it were.
That's great to hear, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I just had a couple of points on the French league that I thought I might bring up. I mean, since you've mentioned Djibril Cissé, I'll probably start with that one. I don't know if anyone else gets this, but I can't help but feel so sorry for Djibril Cissé. I remember him coming on against Senegal in 2002, and he was this blisteringly quick, promising young player who was ready to take the world by storm. You know, that match Auxerre versus Paris Saint-Germain just before Ronaldinho left, he was the star of the show. When everyone said, well, this is going to be Ronaldinho's moment, he won Auxerre the game. And now you look at him now and you think, a guy like that shouldn't be struggling the way he's struggling. But people often forget he broke his leg twice. Yeah, and managed
badly as well.
Yeah, and managed to miss a World Cup after playing a friendly game against China, where he was ready to take his place up front, and then suddenly it happens to him again. He spends another 9 months out. So I mean, it's an interesting thing because it looks like his love for the game is just gone. You see him; he's listless. He doesn't make any runs anymore. He never takes players on anymore. He's like he's waiting for a tap in.
I think he has suffered a lot confidence-wise. I think you're right there, Hiral, and obviously the fact that it's a self-perpetuating problem, because the more he's struggled with his confidence, the worse the problem's got, because the team doesn't really rely on him more now. And like we were saying earlier, Mamadou Niang, who I believe is a very fine striker, in terms of natural ability, I would say is absolutely nowhere near Djibril Cissé, but he is the player that Marseille are relying on now. And I think it's difficult. He has had his injuries, Cisse, and he's had some personal difficulties as well. And I think it probably all started at Liverpool, where not only he got injured right at the start, but when he came back, he wasn't really relied on. He was tried on the wings quite a lot just because of his pace, something that didn't really suit him. So I think he struggled to find that sort of natural rhythm that he had at Auxerre, where he was the main man and everything was running through him. I mean, there's speculation today that's linked in with a move maybe to Lens in the transfer window in January, as he is so little relied on in Marseille. But I think even when Young goes to the African Nations Cup, that Guéret will elect to buy another player instead of bring Cisse into the team, which I think is quite sad. But I think if you are a player under pressure and you're a player struggling for form, it's very difficult to get it together at a club like Marseille because the pressure is so intense.
Sounds like Pompey would be a good place for him, you know? Good tutelage under Harry Redknapp.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, or maybe a season or so ago, you would have said Bolton, a sort of team that's got a sort of record of bringing back players who've maybe got a lot of ability but maybe gone off the beaten track. I mean, certainly Cisse himself would favour a move to England rather than another French club. But he turned down a couple of moves to the Premier League in order to sign for Marseille in the summer. He does still have 4 years, 4.5 years left on his contract at Marseille. I don't know, there's a feeling maybe that ship sailed and maybe he will have to go somewhere else in France to kickstart himself again.
So maybe we're somewhere the fans aren't so demanding. But I mean, the other thing I wanted to talk about was, I think this is an interesting season for French football because, we always hear about how the money is still flowing through French football, but yet it's still very much a selling league. And, you have these sort of generational shifts. So one great generation goes, another one has to come in first place. And I think this is maybe the start of that. You're seeing a lot of younger players coming through, in teams like Saint-Etienne and Le Mans and Nancy. These are the young guys, teams like Metz, where all the young players are having to come through. And I was just wondering who you thought might have been the young player who's caught your eye, who's caught the eye the most this season. Because for me, no bias or anything, but I'd probably go for someone like Gervinho, who's been brilliant pretty much since the beginning.
Yeah, he's done very well. He's scored a spectacular first goal last week as Le Mans beat Nancy, who've been doing very, very well. But this is going to be an obvious choice, but it's very, very difficult to look beyond the Lyon pair of Karim Benzema and Hatem Ben Arfa, who not only have become mainstays for Lyon this season, but also they've started to become mainstays for the French side. And I think they'll play a big part in Euro 2008. I mean, Benzema is the top scorer in the league, and it's really difficult to overstate how good he is. He scored 12 goals in, say, 14, 15 starts already this season, and he's got a few in Europe as well. He's still not turned 20. He doesn't turn 20 for a couple of weeks. And I think the key match for him is if we go back to an actual France loss, where they lost to Scotland at Parc des Princes. And I think that was the moment when Benzema came on for the last 20 minutes of that, when he showed that he was very much the future of French strikers, and it'll probably be looked upon as the moment which finished David Trezeguet as part of the French team. I mean,
thank God.
There's not a lot not to like about Trezeguet. I mean, he's a terrific goal scorer, and as I said on a number of occasions, I think Manchester United would have benefited from getting him maybe a year, 2 years ago, and I think he would have scored probably 25, 30 goals a season. But apart from goal scoring, he can't really give you that much. And he looked very lost and alone that night, and he was left by the French press to really carry the can for that defeat. Whereas Benzema is not only an absolutely clinical goal scorer, but he can do so much outside the box. He's very instinctive and intelligent in linking with other players. He can pass, he can make good runs left and right, he's fast. I mean, what's exciting people so much about them is not just that as a player of extraordinary natural ability, he's very, very mature and ready to step up to the plate for the national team, and has already looked the part for the national team. But the fact is, he's certainly got a bit of Bergkamp in him. He's got that sort of intelligence to drop off. But a Bergkamp who's a much better goal scorer, please stop me if I'm building him up a bit too much.
Well, I was going to stop you because Herald clearly didn't agree with you on the David Trezeguet support. Anyway,
it's just that I think David Trezeguet was an absolutely fantastic striker, but he shouldn't have been anywhere near that French team for maybe the last 3-4 years. Definitely not that World Cup. I think with Benzema, you see that intelligence, the same sort of intelligence that you see in a striker like Samuel Eto'o. I had to mention him at least once. Something like that. But Ben Arfa, I'm not as convinced about him yet, because we've been hearing about Ben Arfa for years, and I still don't see him. I still see him as the guy with all the talent that still doesn't do much, game in, game out.
And it's funny. His end product has become better. For those who don't know, he's a very, very talented left-sided player who was strongly coveted by Mourinho when he was at Chelsea before he signed professional forms with Lyon. The problem with him is he was so talented that he was sort of overhyped a bit too early, and from being the future of French football at 16, 17, he was, as far as everyone was concerned, dead in the water at 18 or 19. I think you're really right, Herald. It's fair observation that I think he's definitely got a bit to learn, whereas Benzema is very team aware, and already, despite being younger than Ben Arfa, Benzema always makes the right pass, always makes the right run. Ben Arfa's really fast. He's terrific left foot. He's scored some goals this season, and he's really improved from having his first consistent run in the team. But he still sometimes doesn't know when to release the ball. If you compare him to, say, another very promising young French player of 20 years old, Samir Nasri of Marseille, a really fantastic playmaker, who's been unfairly rather hyped as the New Zidane, which is rather inaccurate description. But he's a very, very good passer of the ball, and despite his young years, he's a very good understanding of when to make the right pass, and I think that is what Ben Arfa lacks. But what he will hopefully pick up with time, if you could combine his ability of running at pace with Nasri's passing, you'd have one hell of a player, I think.
Hey, Ralph, thanks a lot for the call. Make sure you call back soon. And Andy, just a quick note that I've just figured out while I was listening to you. You're becoming, because you are living in Lyon, I should tell people that, you're becoming a little bit French in your mannerisms. You do the
Well, you try smoking 60 Gitane a day and not sounding like that.
Okay. Mama in Newcastle, good morning.
Yeah, Nana Dotton, actually.
Okay, apologies. Yeah. Mama.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Tim, ever since Garrincha played for Botafogo, has there been any player, or more to the point, major star approaching his ability who has played there, Well,
I think Garrincha was just an absolute one-off. The kind of player that you get maybe once in a century. Yeah. And he's still absolutely revered for that reason. And to give you an example of his prestige, and he was for people who might not know him, he was the right winger for Botafogo and for Brazil. And while Garrincha and Pelé were on the field together, which they were for over 40 times between 58 and 66, Brazil never lost a game. Yeah. Garrincha and Pelé are the twin gods of Brazilian football, and although Pelé's number one, Garrincha's not that far behind. And actually, in the 62 World Cup, when Pelé was injured, Garrincha did the whole thing himself. He came off the right wing, he played everywhere. The England players who were eliminated in the quarter-final that year, 62, I think they came back with twisted blood after trying to mark him. He was very, very hard to mark indeed. Yeah. To give you an example of his prestige, Botafogo have just moved out of the Maracanã as their main stadium. They've got a new stadium which was built by the local state authority for the Pan American Games, and they've moved into it. Now there's a famous statue of Garrincha in the Maracanã. It looks as if that statue is going to be taken out and moved to Engenhão, Botafogo's new stadium. So his memory is still absolutely revered. And there's a phrase, I think, by the Uruguayan writer Eduardo Galeano, who said that Garrincha gave more pleasure than anyone else who's ever played the game, just because of his style of play. He taunted the left back like a bullfighter with a bull. Whether someone of his style would be entirely as effective today, I'm not entirely sure. He would have to adapt his game. Garrincha was a player of short sprints. Yeah. He would sprint 10 yards, stop. Sprint 10 yards, stop. I spoke to Vavá, and Vavá was a centre forward who fought for Brazil in 58 and 62, who got on the end of his crosses and scored a lot of his goals. Yeah. And he told me, he said that if Garrincha had to sprint 40 yards all in one go, he'd fall over. He had twisted legs, actually, Garrincha, which when he first came out on the field, people would just stare at him and laugh. Who is this bandy-legged kid? And until they found that they just couldn't stop him. In today's football, as I was saying earlier on, much more physically intense. He'd have 2 or 3 people on him, right, all going in at once. He'd have to adapt his game. But I'm sure that someone with the unbelievable ability that he had would find a way to be outstanding in the modern game, if perhaps not quite as outstanding and quite as absolutely magical as he was in the late 50s and early 60s.
All right. Just another quick question. Whatever happened to Jalminha?
Jalminha was a very, very talented left-footed attacking midfielder who played some terrific football in both Brazil and Spain with La Coruña. But he had an Achilles heel, which was his temperament. He was always rowing with people. In fact, he missed out on the 2002 World Cup. Because he had a blazing row with his coach at La Coruña. It was who's going to get the last spot as an attacking midfielder in the 2002 World Cup. Is it going to be a young man, a teenager coming through called Kaká, or is it going to be Jalminha? And because Jalminha had a blazing row, I think it went to fists with his coach at La Coruña. That's right, yeah. That kind of ruled Jalminha out of the chance of winning a World Cup medal. He's now retired, and I think he's probably kicking himself a little bit because a player with his ability could have achieved a lot more.
Thanks a lot for the call, Mama. Englishmen are just as bad as Brazilians. Suddenly we're 30 plus. It's okay for women to play football here. I'm 40. Remember the way we looked at girls playing football back then? It didn't bother me then and not now, seeing as the girls of today would run circles around me anyhow. Easy to say, rugby was my main sport. Women play some good rugby these days too. Sorry to bring that up. Not really, says John in Battersea. Lee in Belfast, good morning.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thanks very much. Thanks for calling.
It's taken me 10 years to call, but now I have.
Well, congratulations.
Well, I was wondering if I could ask Tim. I was thinking about an Argentinian striker who was signed by Derby during the time of Jim Smith for $3.5 million. I think he even scored a goal for us. But he returned home after 5 games. I think it was a dodgy passport.
That's right.
I can't recall his name. And I was just wondering what happened to his career afterwards.
Esteban Fuertes was his name.
It.
Bichi Fuertes, as he's known in Argentina. Yeah, it was apparently it was one of the most amateurish false passports that anyone ever seen. So they didn't get him very far, which is a bit of a shame because he's a reasonable striker. With a reasonable goal record. He bounced around a number of sides in Argentina, and most recently he's been in Chile, where he's been doing extremely well. I think with Universidad Católica, one of the big 3 sides. But last weekend he suffered a serious injury, and at the age he is now, he's kind of mid-30s. You know, that's the age where every serious injury is a kind of is it the end? So bad news for Bichi Fuertes, and unfortunate for Derby fans that they weren't able to see him because I think he might have made a contribution.
Yeah, that was the season we were relegated that season.
Right.
And he came and he I think he played four games and he scored 1 goal and he looked dangerous, and we were quite excited about it. And then the replacement was Branko Strupar, who was fantastic but always injured. So thanks a lot for telling me that, and I look forward to phoning again.
Lee, don't take 10 years about it though. You have to wait. Yeah, okay, mate. Thanks very much for the call, Andy. Please, who will win next week, Rangers or Lyon? So ask Stuart.
I don't think there will be a winner in the game. I think it will be a draw, and I think that obviously that's enough to take Rangers through. I think Lyon have been building themselves up to it for a while, and they are in very good form at the moment. But I think Rangers at home are a very, very difficult proposition. Of course, the last team to win at Ibrox in Europe was a French side. It was Auxerre, I think, a couple of years ago when they still had Jean-Alain Boumsong and Philippe Mexes. And it's possible. Ability-wise, I think they've got the edge over Rangers, but I think with a full Ibrox house behind them, I think Rangers will just do enough to get through.
I was reading an old article of Tim's where he was talking about a lack of quality full-backs. In light of this, does he envisage a Banega-Mascherano combination in front of three centre-backs as the future of the Argentinian backline in a more Brazil-like separation of attack and defence? Asked James in Newcastle.
Well, perhaps. It'll be very interesting to see Banega, who's a teenage midfielder, terrific passing midfielder. Be very interesting to see him in this World Club Championship. And Boca will have a difficult game to get through either Etoile or Pachuca. In order to get through it, presumably Milan in the final. If they can get through that semi-final, and remember in the last couple of years, the Brazilian side, they had great difficulty getting through the semi-final. They had real problems getting through the semi-final, so it's a hurdle that they could fall at. But if Boca do get through it and do face Milan, then Andy's talking about Milan as an ageing side. If Banega's passing game is on song, and he could well pass the legs off them. And Argentina are spoilt for choice, really, because Banega, Mascherano, Gago of Real Madrid, who's a terrific talent as well. The fullback position, both fullback positions are a little bit of a worry. There's not a lot on the left at all. You wonder about Insua of Liverpool perhaps coming through. You wonder about maybe even Arca, Julio Arca, who's been out of the picture for a while and hasn't even been playing, as I understand it, on the left side. You wonder about him getting in, because there's not a lot on the left. Right wing, well, Zanetti can't go on forever. Pablo Zabaleta of Espanyol is a perhaps for the future. So I think it is going to be interesting to see the fullback future for Argentina, and spoilt for choice in central midfield.
Tim, what's your favourite word, Spanish or Portuguese word?
My favourite word in Portuguese is chafariz.
No, it's not.
Chafariz means fountain.
No, it's
and
not.
I think it's onomatopoeic. You can hear chafariz, you can hear a fountain. Go on. Go on.
Well, BK Yeovil has figured it out. Your favourite word is Libertadores.
Libertadores.
Yeah, because you say it quite a lot.
Well, it's a big competition. It's like saying Andy's favourite word is Champions League.
Fair enough, I'm sure it is. Anyway, for Andy from Stewie Luton, do you think that Ajax striker Hussel Nar will join Chelsea in the January window?
Unlikely, I think. I think Huntelaar is likely to stay till the end of the season. Ajax have quite a good chance of winning the title this season. And PSV Eindhoven, the leaders, of course, took a bit of a surprise beating at home by Roda. It's a very open Dutch title, and all the better for it this season, because Feyenoord made some good reinforcements this summer, and they've got some experience in their side with Roy Mackay, Giovanni van Bronckhorst, who obviously British fans will be familiar with as well. So it's an exciting league, but I don't see any major movements in the January transfer window. They're usually very expensive, although on this occasion, because we've got Euro 2008 coming up, it may actually be cheaper to buy someone in January, because of course prices of players inflate ridiculously after a major championship.
Tim, Bob in Perth wants to know, he says, my friend in Colombia keeps raving on to me about a player called Sherman Cardenas. Can you tell me anything about him?
Yeah, he's. I haven't seen too much that's leading people to this position yet, and I saw quite a lot of him at the start of the year, the Under-20 Championships. He's lightweight, attacking midfielder, or perhaps support striker, and looked to me to be still too lightweight yet. And he got thrown in very, very early. Bucaramanga is a side that he plays for in Colombia. I don't think he's had much of a club season. They've had a dreadful season. I think he's contributed maybe 1-2 goals to it. So for me, I think he's a player who was thrown in very early and is suffering perhaps from being hyped up too soon.
And Andy, if possible, and this is, can you ask your European correspondent how NAC Breda are doing in the Eredivisie, and does he know what NAC stands for? Asked Dave in Swansea.
I don't know what NAC stands for, I'm afraid. I'll make a note of it and try and find out. I think they're doing okay, nothing spectacular. What's notable about the Dutch league, as well as the fact that you've got these three teams battling it out, at the start at the top. Is also you've got some very, very weak teams at the bottom. Sparta, Rotterdam, Heracles, and Excelsior. They've taken some pretty heavy beatings between them this season. So it's sort of polarising, even though you've got more of a proper three-way tussle at the top.
Can Andy tell me anything about Henri Saivet of Bordeaux? Please ask James in Burton.
I'm not quite sure about that. I don't know. I'd have to check the pronunciation, Doughton, I'm afraid.
Doughton, Doughton.
I'll
very
figure
good.
out who it is in 5 minutes.
Yeah, Doughton, yeah, we love that. Anyway, for Tim, this is from Ivan, currently driving. He'd like to know what's happened to Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa.
Yeah, Ozzy Ardiles is working in Argentina. He's gone back to coach the club from which he joined Tottenham in 1978, which is Huracan. And he's having quite a hard time on adapting to the realities of Argentinian football. He's done all right with them. He's kept Huracan mid-table, and he's done. But the problem is kind of the lack of money. There's been because the players not receiving salaries on time and all of this. And he was asked, what do you miss about England? And he was saying, I miss the tranquility to play golf. So I think and he says himself that he feels more English about some of these things than Argentinian. So I think he's having quite a hard time readapting. Ricky Villa, I don't know what he's doing. The last time Ardiles coached in Argentina, he coached Racing Club 2 or 3 years ago, and he brought in Villa as his assistant. I don't think Villa is with him now with Huracan. I'm not even sure if he's in football at the moment. I don't know.
Okay, this is from Simon in London. Is there any weight in the rumour that Pablo Aimar is going to Spurs in January? He's currently on the bench at Zaragoza, doing not a lot.
I'm not sure about that. I think, as I say, I'm always sceptical about January transfers. I think a more likely South American departure from Zaragoza is Andres D'Alessandro. He's had his differences with the coach Victor there. And I think if any of the Argentinian contingent at Zaragoza are going to move on, it's going to be him. And probably back to the Premiership.
Aymar's even talked about moving back to River Plate in Argentina. So perhaps Tottenham are in a Riquelme situation again. Can they get the Argentinian, or will the call of home prove too powerful?
Congratulations to the Legendino, Tim, for 10 years. This is from Peter. But Dawson, can you ask Andy what has happened to Borussia Dortmund since their Champions League victory? Keep up the good work.
Basically, what happened was a sort of Leeds United tale of financial woe, almost. That they spent an incredible amount of money on players that they didn't really have. Thomas Rosicky, actually, now of Arsenal being one of those who they bought for the thick end of £15 million. And it was followed by financial disaster, having to shed a lot of players, having to take a lot of loans, and that's why they're much weaker now, and that's why you don't see them in the Champions League. But obviously, I'm often extolling the virtues of going and seeing football if you're in Germany. Of all the places you could go and see football in Germany, Dortmund is one of the best. They get almost 80,000 fans every week, and they've got the biggest home terrace in Europe. So if you're over there at any point and you get a chance to have a look, do. It's not very expensive to get into football in Germany, and it's one of the best atmospheres you'll see in European football.
This is from Tony, the Liverpool fan in Wigan, long-time listener, and I have to commend you on a fantastic broadcast, although my wife isn't best pleased that I'm staying up till the wee hours of the morning to listen to the show. Now, if possible, I'd like to ask the great Tim Vickery a couple of questions. Firstly, is Tim surprised that Lucas Leiva has settled into the Premiership so quickly? And secondly, a friend of mine who's a massive fan of Brazilian football told me that the best young talent in Brazil is Renato Augusto. Does Tim know anything about him, and does he think that Liverpool have a chance of getting him?
Lucas hasn't surprised me at all. Watched him come up, like him very much. Big blonde figure who has, as well as marking duties, has a lot of attacking ability. Gets forward, shoots well from range, can burst beyond the line. Hasn't surprised me too much at all. His early success. Renato Augusto, he plays for Flamengo. He's a 19-year-old. Reminds me a little bit of a young right-footed version of Rivaldo. The same kind of build, sometimes the same kind of ungainly gait weight about him, almost as if he's wading through water, but can play very well either as the top of the midfield diamond or as a support striker. Right-footed, great power in his right foot, is working on his left, scored a vital goal for Flamengo, the one that qualified them for, I'll say that word one more time, the Libertadores, with a terrific shot on his left foot, which I was delighted to see. Benfica looked to be first in line to get him, maybe in the January transfer window, but a player who perhaps in the long term will be in the Premiership. He'd have to toughen up a lot, I think, to come into English football. Obviously, there's the work permit thing to confront as well. But at the moment, and this is the problem that he'll suffer when he goes to English football. At the moment, he's looking for the foul too often. It was a problem for him, I'll say that word one more time, in the Libertadores last year. He wasn't getting the fouls that he usually gets in the Brazilian Championship. And coming to Europe, where far fewer fouls are given for physical contact, and that's something that he really will have to adapt to.
Apparently NAC stands for Nuad Advendo Combinati, formed when two clubs, the first two words of the club names come together, apparently. Whatever happened to Freddie Adu, asked Stephen Yorkshire? Thought he was going to be the next big thing.
He's looking very, very good at Benfica. He's not a regular starter yet, but he's forced his way into the first-team picture. He's developed a really nice knack of coming on late as an impact substitute, and he's scored a number of late vital goals for Benfica already. As I was saying about Benfica in their excellent performance against Milan in the Champions League the other week, they've got a really young, hungry squad. A couple of players who Tim will probably be familiar with. Angel Di Maria came over from Argentina in the summer, and Oscar Cardoso, who also came over from South America. So, Adu's knocking on the door pretty firmly, and Camacho will struggle to leave him out for much longer.
Our listener in Sydney's been waiting for this answer, Tim. I'm listening to the show online from Sydney, and I have a question for Tim. I'd like to ask him about the Palmeiras goalkeeper, Diego Cavalieri.
Done it. Obviously, fell asleep for a little while because I threw that one on the end of our answer to Andrew in Greenwich's question.
You're slick. You are slick, mate.
You couldn't see the join, could you?
No, I couldn't see the join at all.
See, that's the value of 10 years of experience.
It's 10 years. Hey, well, it's time. It's nearly the end of the World Football Phone-In. We've got to celebrate this 10 years. Hey, I want everybody. Hang on, everybody in the team. I'd like you to come into the studio, please. Standing ovation time. Come on, everybody in, please, and all the others out there, all the producers, the backroom boys that Tim's always going on about. You know, Questy, everybody out there. Ben, come in, please. I'd like the editor tonight to come in as well. Yes, you and Nachi, please come in. Standing ovation. This is a 10th anniversary show. We've only got a minute to celebrate this. Everybody, hey, who's answering the phones? Please, could you come? I want everybody in the studio now. This deserves a 10th standing ovation. It's 10 years of the World Football Phone-In. Tim Vickery's been doing this for 10 years. I'm standing up as well. I'm standing up
with the help of all of these people.
Round of applause. Spontaneous. Well, more or less spontaneous. Hey! Everybody's in here. Well done. Well done, mate. Well done.
You've been listening to a download of the World Football Phone-In from Up All Night at BBC Radio 5 Live. You can put your questions live on Saturday mornings from 2:30am to 4am, or you can email us at upallnight, that's all one word, at bbc.co.uk. That's upallnight at bbc.co.uk.